Husband spit on wife in front of children, not knowing she owned 90% of the company. Jennifer Miller wiped her face in silence as the tomato sauce dripped down her chin, and their 2 children cried desperately at the dinner table. 20 years of marriage had been reduced to that moment of total humiliation when her husband decided to spit the pasta she had prepared with such care directly onto her face. It was when Robert Miller rose from his chair, pointing his finger at her with all the anger he could muster, that he shouted the words that would forever echo in everyone's memory. "This garbage you call food isn't even fit for the stray dogs. You're useless, Jennifer. Completely useless, and all you do is embarrass me," he yelled while small bits of pasta still stuck to her face. Their 15-year-old daughter Emily ran to her room in tears, covering her ears to block out those screams. Their 12-year-old son Ethan remained frozen in his chair, watching his mother use the floral-patterned cloth napkin to calmly wipe her face, as if this were just another normal day in the Miller family home. Robert didn't stop there. He continued pouring out all his frustration onto the woman who had spent the entire day preparing that special dinner to celebrate their wedding anniversary. "Do you think I work like a dog at that company, just to come home and eat this garbage? I deserve better than this," he continued, pacing around the living room and gesturing aggressively. Jennifer stood up slowly, still with a few strands of pasta stuck in her curly hair. She looked at her husband with an expression he had never seen before. It wasn't fear, it wasn't submission, it wasn't even anger. It was something different, something that made Robert's heart race for a second, without him quite knowing why. "I'm going to get a towel," she said simply in a strangely calm voice. Robert expected tears, he expected pleas, he expected apologies, but all he received was that penetrating gaze and that frightening calm. As Jennifer went upstairs to the bathroom, Robert continued grumbling to himself in the dining room. He had worked as a sales manager at Westbrook Construction for 15 years, and he felt he deserved much more recognition than he received. His professional frustration always ended up being taken out at home, where he felt entitled to be the king of the castle. Upstairs, Jennifer looked at herself in the bathroom mirror as she washed her face with cold water. 20 years ago, she had married that man thinking he would change, that love would be enough to turn him into a better person. But the humiliations had only increased over time, and she had learned to silently accept each one. What Robert had no idea about was that 3 months ago, Jennifer's life had completely changed. A letter arrived in the mail, informing her that her great-aunt Beatrice, whom she barely knew, had passed away and left her an inheritance. At first, Jennifer thought it was some kind of scam, but the lawyer handling the estate confirmed everything was true. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out, now continuing. Aunt Beatrice had been a successful businesswoman who built a small real estate empire over decades of hard work. She never had children and had observed Jennifer's life from a distance, knowing about the difficulties her niece faced with her controlling husband. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was shares in various companies that Beatrice had acquired over the years. Among those companies was none other than Westbrook Construction, where Robert worked as a manager. Jennifer discovered she owned no less than 90% of the company's shares, which made her the majority owner of the entire business. For 3 months, she kept this information an absolute secret, studying everything about business administration and discreetly consulting with specialized lawyers. That night, after the dinner episode, Jennifer made a decision that would change their lives forever. She packed a small bag with the children's clothes and some of her personal things. She carefully woke Emily and Ethan, explaining that they needed to go to Grandma Margaret's house for a few days. "Mum, what happened? Why do we have to leave home in the middle of the night?" asked Emily, still sleepy and frightened by the events of the previous night. "Mommy needs to take care of some important things, my darlings. Grandma is already waiting for you, and it will be better this way for now," replied Jennifer, hugging both children with an affection they hadn't felt in a long time. Robert was sleeping soundly in the master bedroom, hungover after drinking several beers to forget the day's stress. Jennifer left a simple note on the dresser. "I took the children to my mother's. I need some time to think, Jennifer." At Mrs. Margaret's house, Jennifer's mother received her grandchildren with a heavy heart. She had witnessed many of the couple's arguments over the years, always begging her daughter to take more drastic action. At 72 years old, Mrs. Margaret had the wisdom of someone who had lived long enough to recognize a man who was no good. "My daughter, you did the right thing. That man deserves neither you nor these children," the lady said, hugging Jennifer in the kitchen while she made coffee for everyone. "Mum, I have some things to tell you. Things that are going to change our lives forever," replied Jennifer, her eyes shining in a way her mother hadn't seen in decades. Meanwhile, Robert woke up with a terrible headache and was surprised by the silence in the house. Usually, at that time, Jennifer would already be preparing breakfast, and the children would be making noise getting ready for school. When he went down to the kitchen and found the note, his first reaction was fury. "How dare she leave me like this? Who does she think she is?" he grumbled, crumpling the paper in his hands. Robert was certain that in a few days Jennifer would return with her head bowed, apologizing and begging him to take her back. After all, she had nowhere to go, no money of her own, and depended completely on him for everything. At Westbrook Construction, Robert's co-workers noticed he was even more irritable than usual. He spent the whole day complaining about his ungrateful wife who had abandoned the home for no reason. Some employees already knew Robert's reputation as a difficult husband, but no one dared to confront him directly. "Robert is impossible today," commented Jessica from the reception desk to her colleague in accounting. "It seems his wife left home and took the children. From the way he's talking, she must have had her reasons." Across town, Jennifer was having the most important meeting of her life. In the office of the lawyer, Dr. William Parker, she finally understood the real extent of the inheritance she had received. Besides the shares in Westbrook Construction, she was also the owner of apartments in upscale neighborhoods of New York City, land in the metropolitan area, and a considerable amount in bank investments. "Mrs. Jennifer, you hold assets valued at approximately $50 million, the lawyer explained, adjusting his glasses as he leafed through the documents. "Your aunt was a very smart businesswoman, and she left everything very well organized so that you could take control when you felt ready." Jennifer could hardly believe what she was hearing. For 20 years, she had lived like a prisoner in her own home, depending on the small allowances that Robert gave her for grocery shopping. Now she discovered she was one of the wealthiest women in New York City. "Dr. William, I would like to officially take control of the companies, especially Westbrook Construction," she said with a determination that surprised even herself. "Perfectly possible, Mrs. Miller. I will arrange all the necessary documentation. Do you plan to make changes to the administration?" asked the lawyer, already suspecting the answer. "Many changes, Doctor. Many indeed." 3 days later, Robert received a strange call at work. The board secretary, Mrs. Barbara, asked him to attend an extraordinary meeting in the main conference room. Robert thought it was odd since these meetings were usually announced in advance, and he, as a manager, was always notified beforehand. It must be about the new Upper East Side project, he thought, straightening his tie and heading for the elevator. Robert had always dreamed of being promoted to director and imagined that this might finally be his opportunity. When he opened the conference room door, Robert almost had a heart attack. There was Jennifer sitting in the main chair, wearing an elegant navy blue suit he had never seen before. Her hair was impeccably styled. She wore subtle but sophisticated makeup, and she carried a genuine leather briefcase that certainly cost more than his monthly salary. What are you doing here, Jennifer?" stammered Robert, looking around the room and seeing other executives present, all with serious expressions. "Please have a seat, Mr. Miller," replied Jennifer, with a firm voice he had never heard before. "We have important matters to discuss." Mr. Richard Westbrook, the company president, was sitting next to Jennifer with a discreet smile on his face. He had known Beatrice personally and had always admired that woman's business intelligence. When he learned that the niece had inherited the shares, he was curious to get to know her better. "Robert, I would like to introduce you to the new majority owner of Westbrook Construction, Mrs. Jennifer Miller," said Mr. Richard, gesturing toward Jennifer. Robert's jaw dropped. He looked at his wife, then at the president, then back at Jennifer, trying to process the information he had just received. "This must be some kind of joke," he murmured, wiping his sweaty face. "It's no joke at all, Robert," Jennifer replied calmly. "I inherited these shares from my Aunt Beatrice 3 months ago. During that time, I have been studying the company's operations and preparing some changes that I consider necessary." Jennifer opened the leather briefcase and took out some perfectly organized documents. Robert recognized the same meticulous woman who kept the house impeccably organized, but now that organization was being directed toward business. "The first change we will implement is the creation of a more rigorous human resources department with clear policies against harassment and inappropriate treatment among employees," she announced without taking her eyes off Robert. "Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. We will also establish a psychological support program for employees who are facing personal problems that may affect their professional performance," continued Jennifer, flipping through the papers with the confidence of someone who had studied every detail. Robert felt the world crashing down around him. Not only had Jennifer become his boss, but she was clearly implementing policies that had everything to do with his abusive behavior. The other executives present in the room watched the scene with interest, some barely able to hide their smiles of satisfaction. "Jennifer, we need to talk in private," said Robert, trying to maintain some control over the situation. "This is not the place for personal matters, Mr. Miller," she replied, emphasizing the formal address. "If you have any questions about the company's new policies, you can contact the Human Resources Department." Mr. Richard watched the interaction between the couple with growing admiration for Jennifer. In 15 years of working with Robert, he had noticed the manager's arrogance and difficult temper, but he never imagined the man was like that at home too. After the meeting, Robert tried to approach Jennifer in the company parking lot. She was getting into a new car, an elegant black sedan that definitely wasn't in the budget of a housewife dependent on her husband's salary. "Jennifer, for God's sake, let's talk like civilized people. Where did you get the money for all this? Where did these shares come from?" he asked, clearly desperate. "Robert, for 20 years you treated me as if I were inferior, as if I were incapable of anything beyond cleaning the house and cooking. Now you're going to find out what I'm really capable of," she replied, starting the car's engine. "You can't just destroy our family like this. What about the children? Have you thought about the children?" he shouted, trying one last emotional plea. "The children are just fine, thank you. For the first time in years they are sleeping peacefully without having to hear shouting and arguments every night," Jennifer retorted, stepping on the accelerator and leaving Robert alone in the parking lot. At Mrs. Margaret's house, Emily and Ethan were adapting well to their new routine. Their grandmother spoiled them with delicious food and old family stories, while Jennifer spent her days studying business administration and planning changes at the construction company. "Mom, why doesn't Dad come to visit us?" Ethan asked one afternoon while doing his homework at the kitchen table. "Your father can come whenever he wants, my love. But first, he needs to learn to treat people with respect," replied Jennifer, stroking her son's hair. Emily, at 15, was more aware of her parents' marital problems. "Mom, I always hated it when Dad yelled at you. We were scared, you know. Ethan and I always talked about it in our room." Jennifer felt her heart tighten upon learning that the children had suffered as much as she had from the situation. "Mommy is going to do everything differently now, my darlings. You will never have to be afraid at home again." Meanwhile, Robert was living in a private hell at home. Without Jennifer to take care of the house, he discovered how much he depended on her for everything. Dirty clothes piled up, the refrigerator was empty, and he had no idea how to operate the washing machine. At work, the situation wasn't any better. The new policies implemented by Jennifer were being received with enthusiasm by the employees, especially the women who worked at the company. Robert noticed the different looks from his colleagues, as if everyone knew something he didn't. It was then that Jessica from reception approached him at the end of an especially difficult afternoon. "Robert, can I talk to you for a minute?" she asked with a serious expression. "Of course, Jessica." "What was that?" he replied, trying to maintain his professional composure. "Look, I know it's none of my business, but we all know how you treat your wife. We've heard you talking about her in a really ugly way, calling her stupid, useless," said Jessica, crossing her arms. Robert felt his face grow hot with shame. "Jessica, those are personal matters." "They're not personal matters anymore when your wife becomes our boss, Robert. And from what I saw in the meeting, she is a very intelligent and determined woman." "Maybe you should rethink some of your behavior," Jessica finished, returning to her desk. That night, Robert tried to call Jennifer several times, but she didn't answer the phone. He decided then to go to Mrs. Margaret's house to try for a face-to-face conversation. When he rang the doorbell, it was his mother-in-law herself who answered the door. "Robert, what do you want?" asked Mrs. Margaret, without opening the door completely. "Mrs. Margaret, I need to speak with Jennifer. This is all a misunderstanding. I can explain," he began, trying to use his most pleasant tone of voice. "A misunderstanding. Robert, I have witnessed you humiliating my daughter dozens of times over these years. Do you think I'm blind, that I'm deaf?" replied the woman, with a firmness Robert didn't expect. "But Mrs. Margaret, I love Jennifer. I love my children. Love isn't shown with yelling, with humiliation, with disrespect. My daughter has finally found the courage to leave that situation, and I won't let you drag her back into that suffering," declared Mrs. Margaret, closing the door in her son-in-law's face. Inside the house, Jennifer had heard the entire conversation. Emily and Ethan were in their room watching television, unaware of the drama unfolding at the front door. Jennifer hugged her mother, feeling immense gratitude for having a family that supported her. "Mum, thank you for defending me. For all these years, I thought it was normal that all marriages were like that," said Jennifer with tears in her eyes. "My dear, marriage is a partnership. It's companionship. It's mutual respect. What you had with that man was a prison," replied Mrs. Margaret, stroking her daughter's face. The following week, Jennifer officially attended Westbrook Construction as the new owner. She had hired a business consulting firm to help her better understand all aspects of the business, and she was impressed with the company's growth potential. Mr. Richard welcomed her into his office with great enthusiasm. "Jennifer, your Aunt Beatrice was a visionary. She always said that one day someone from her family would come to continue her business. Mr. Richard, I would like to implement some more profound changes in the company. I have some ideas about expansion and service diversification," said Jennifer, opening a folder full of notes and projects she had developed. During the next 2 weeks, Jennifer worked tirelessly to understand all the company's departments. She spoke with employees at all levels, from the construction workers at the job sites to the engineers responsible for the most complex projects. It was during one of these visits that she discovered something that made her even more outraged with Robert. While talking with Mrs. Jenkins, the person in charge of cleaning the offices, Jennifer learned details about her husband's behavior at work. "Mrs. Jennifer, with all due respect, your husband always treated us very poorly. He yells at everyone, especially the women. We were afraid of him," told Mrs. Jenkins, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mrs. Jenkins, from now on, that is going to change. No one will be treated with disrespect in this company anymore," promised Jennifer, feeling an even greater determination to transform that work environment. Jennifer also discovered that Robert had been passed over for promotions several times, not due to technical incompetence, but because of his difficult temperament and the way he treated his colleagues. Mr. Richard had never mentioned this to her, but other managers had been more direct about Robert's professional limitations. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially to subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now, continuing. Jennifer, your husband has technical knowledge, that's undeniable. But leadership isn't just about knowledge. It's about knowing how to work with people. And that's where he has always struggled, explained Cynthia, the manager of the projects department. With this information, Jennifer made a decision that surprised everyone. Instead of simply firing Robert, she decided to offer him a real chance to change. But this opportunity would come with very clear conditions. At the next meeting, Jennifer presented her proposal. "Robert, you have 2 options. The first is to accept a transfer to our branch in Rochester, where you will work as a technical coordinator, with no team leadership responsibilities." Robert felt the blood rush to his head. A transfer to a smaller city meant a demotion. It meant publicly admitting he had failed. "And what is the second option?" he asked, trying to maintain his composure. "The second option is to agree to participate in a personal and professional development program, which includes psychological therapy and courses on leadership and interpersonal relationships. During this period, you would be on leave from your management duties," Jennifer explained calmly. "You're trying to publicly humiliate me," accused Robert, slamming his hand on the table. "No, Robert. I'm trying to offer you the chance to become a better person. The same chance you never gave me during 20 years of marriage," replied Jennifer, unshaken by his reaction. Mr. Richard observed the interaction with interest. He had seen Jennifer transform in just a few weeks from a timid and insecure woman into a natural and decisive leader. On the other hand, he saw Robert crumbling in the face of the reality of his own limitations. "I need time to think," murmured Robert, leaving the meeting room with his ego completely shattered. That night, Robert looked at himself in the bathroom mirror at home and didn't recognize the man he saw reflected. 20 years ago, he had married Jennifer because she was sweet, affectionate, and he believed he could mold her into the perfect wife. Now he discovered he had lost an extraordinary woman because of his arrogance and insecurity. He decided to seek help from someone he trusted, his older brother, Michael, who lived in Miami Beach and had built a solid marriage of over 30 years. Michael had always been more level-headed, and Robert knew he would receive honest advice, even if it hurt. "Michael, I need your help. My life has been turned upside down," Robert said on the phone, his voice choked up. "Robert, I always knew you treated Jennifer poorly. The whole family knew, but you never wanted to listen to advice," Michael replied directly. I know, but I never thought that she had," Robert stammered, trying to find the right words, "that she had intelligence, that she had strength, that she had dignity. Robert, you spent 20 years trying to diminish an exceptional woman. Now she is showing who she really is," said Michael, not mincing words. The conversation with his brother was a slap in the face for Robert. Michael told him how he had learned over the years that a marriage only works with mutual respect, true partnership, and reciprocal admiration. Everything Robert had destroyed in his relationship with Jennifer. "Michael, do you think there's still hope?" "Do you think she can forgive me?" asked Robert, with a vulnerability he rarely showed. "Robert, forgiveness is one thing. Trust is something completely different. You might get her forgiveness, but it will take years to regain her trust. And that will only happen if you truly change, not just on the surface but on the inside," explained Michael. After this conversation, Robert spent many sleepless nights, rethinking every moment in his life where he had chosen aggression over understanding, humiliation over dialogue, control over respect. He remembered the first time he yelled at Jennifer, right in their second year of marriage. She had burned dinner because she was taking care of Emily, who was just a baby at the time. Instead of helping or simply ordering a pizza, he had exploded, calling her incompetent. He also remembered all the times she tried to talk about her dreams, about wanting to go back to school, to work outside the home, to have some independence. He always replied that a married woman's place was at home, taking care of the children and her husband. Now, seeing Jennifer running a company with such competence, Robert realized how much he had wasted. He hadn't just lost a submissive wife, he had lost the chance to have a true partner in life. At the construction company, Jennifer was implementing changes that went far beyond human resources policies. She had discovered that the company had the potential to grow significantly, but it lacked strategic vision and investment in technology. "Mr. Richard, I would like to modernize our construction processes. I've been studying sustainable construction, and I believe that is the future of the market," said Jennifer during a planning meeting. "Jennifer, you're right. Your Aunt Beatrice always spoke about the importance of anticipating market trends. She would be proud to see you thinking this way," replied Mr. Richard, genuinely impressed with Jennifer's business vision. Jennifer also decided to create a scholarship program for employees' children, something she had always dreamed of doing when she had the financial means. Now, with the resources from the inheritance, she could turn that dream into reality. "I want this company to be an example of how to treat people with dignity," she explained to the new human resources manager she had hired. "I want our employees to feel valued and respected." Meanwhile, Robert had made a decision. He returned to the construction company and sought out Jennifer to accept the second option she had offered, the Personal and Professional Development Program. "Jennifer, I accept. I accept going to therapy. I accept participating in the courses. I accept stepping away from management," he said, with a humility she had never seen before. Jennifer studied him for a few seconds before answering, "Robert, I hope you understand that this is not about our personal relationship. This is about you becoming a better professional and, most importantly, a better person." "I understand," he replied, lowering his head. "And you also need to understand that accepting help is not a sign of weakness. For years you believed that asking for help or admitting a mistake was something weak people did. But in fact, it's the opposite," Jennifer continued. "Mr. Richard had recommended a psychologist specializing in organizational behavior, Dr. Jonathan Brown, who had experience working with executives who had interpersonal relationship difficulties. In the first session, Robert felt extremely uncomfortable. "Doctor, I'm not quite sure how this works. I've never been in therapy in my life," he confessed. "Robert, let's start with the basics. Tell me about your childhood, about how you learned to relate to people," asked Dr. Jonathan, writing in his notebook. It was a revealing session. Robert told about his father, a rigid and authoritarian man who never showed affection or approval. At home, whoever shouted loudest was right, and Robert learned early on that showing vulnerability was synonymous with failure. "Doctor, my father always said that men don't cry, that men solve everything through authority. I grew up thinking that being tough was the only way to be respected," explained Robert, beginning to connect the dots of his own story. "And how did that reflect in your marriage?" asked the psychologist. I think I treated Jennifer the way my father treated my mother. And my mother never questioned it, never reacted. She always accepted everything in silence," replied Robert, feeling a weight in his chest. Dr. Jonathan explained to Robert about behavioral patterns, about how we tend to repeat what we learned in childhood, even when we know it's wrong. He also spoke about the difference between true authority, based on respect, and authoritarianism, based on fear. Alongside therapy, Robert started taking a course on leadership and nonviolent communication. It was another reality check. He discovered he had spent his whole life communicating aggressively without even realizing it. In the course, there were other professionals who were also working on their relationship difficulties. Robert realized he wasn't the only man of his generation who had grown up with toxic and authoritarian male role models. "It's hard to unlearn things we've practiced our whole lives," commented George, a 50-year-old engineer who was also in the course. "But when you lose what's most important because of these behaviors, you have no choice but to change." Robert agreed. He was beginning to understand that Jennifer wasn't just his wife. She was a complete person, with dreams, intelligence, and abilities he had ignored or tried to suppress for years. Meanwhile, at Mrs. Margaret's house, the children were adapting well to the new routine. Emily had enrolled in an English course she had always wanted to take, and Ethan was taking guitar lessons with a neighbor. Jennifer was managing to give the children opportunities she couldn't provide before. "Mom, can I ask you something?" said Emily one night, while helping Jennifer organize some company documents. "Of course, sweetheart. You can ask me anything," replied Jennifer, stopping work to give her daughter her full attention. "Are you going back to Dad?" asked Emily, with a mix of curiosity and apprehension in her voice. Jennifer took a deep breath before answering. "Emily, I don't know what will happen between me and your father, but I know I will never accept being treated disrespectfully again, and you won't have to witness that either." "I don't want you to go back to him, Mom. We were always scared when he shouted. It was awful," confessed Emily, hugging her mother. Those words confirmed for Jennifer that she had made the right decision. Children shouldn't grow up thinking abusive relationships are normal. She wanted them to learn early about respect, dignity, and true love. 2 months later, Robert was making significant progress in therapy. He had learned to identify his anger triggers, to take a deep breath before reacting, to put himself in the other person's shoes before speaking. Dr. Jonathan had suggested he write a letter to Jennifer, not to send, but to organize his thoughts and feelings. It was a painful but necessary exercise. In the letter, Robert acknowledged all the times he had been cruel, all of Jennifer's dreams he had disrespected, all the times he had chosen aggression over dialogue. He also apologized for the harm caused to the children, for creating an environment of tension and fear at home. "Doctor, I'm beginning to understand how much pain I've caused, not only to Jennifer, but to my children as well," said Robert during a session, with tears in his eyes. "Acknowledging that is the first step toward real change, Robert. But now you need to understand that change takes time, and that the people you've hurt have the right not to accept your apologies immediately," explained Dr. Jonathan. Robert was learning one of the hardest lessons of his life, that the consequences of our actions can't always be undone, even when we truly change. At the construction company, Jennifer was having her best professional days. The company had closed important contracts to build sustainable residential complexes, and she was being recognized in the industry as a visionary businesswoman. In an interview for a business magazine, Jennifer spoke about her business philosophy. "I believe a company is only truly successful when everyone involved is treated with dignity, from the investors to the employee who cleans the bathrooms." The article had a positive impact, and other business owners began seeking Jennifer out for partnerships and advice. She was building a solid reputation in the market, based on competence and ethics. Mr. Richard watched Jennifer's transformation with genuine admiration. "Jennifer, your Aunt Beatrice would be proud. You haven't just inherited her business, you're elevating everything to a whole new level." One day, Jennifer received an unexpected visitor at the company. It was her sister-in-law, Patricia, the wife of Robert's brother. They had never been very close, but Patricia had asked to speak in private. "Jennifer, I came here to congratulate you," said Patricia, as soon as they sat down in Jennifer's office. "Congratulate me? Why?" asked Jennifer, surprised. "For having the courage to do what all of us should have done a long time ago. Leave relationships that aren't good for us," replied Patricia, with touching sincerity. Patricia shared that she was also experiencing similar problems with her husband, but had never had the courage to take a stand. Seeing Jennifer take control of her life had inspired other women in the family to question their own relationships. "Jennifer, you've become an example for all of us. You've shown that it's never too late to start over, that it's never too late to discover who we really are," said Patricia, emotionally. That conversation made Jennifer realize that her story was impacting people beyond her immediate family. She began to think of ways to help other women going through similar situations. That's how Project Fresh Start was born, an initiative by the construction company to offer job opportunities and professional training for women leaving abusive relationships. Jennifer wanted to use her privileged position to make a difference in other people's lives. "Mr. Richard, I would like to allocate a portion of the company's profits to this social project. I believe we have a social responsibility beyond profit," explained Jennifer during a board meeting. "Jennifer, that is exactly the kind of vision that will differentiate our company in the market. I fully support it," replied Mr. Richard, increasingly impressed with Jennifer's leadership. Meanwhile, Robert continued his process of change. He had started doing volunteer work at an institution that helped men deal with aggression issues. It was a humbling but necessary experience. "Robert, I want you to share your story with the group," requested the program coordinator during one of the sessions. It was the first time Robert spoke publicly about his mistakes, about how he had treated Jennifer and the children, and about the consequences of his actions. Some men in the group identified with his story, while others judged him harshly. "Man, you lost an incredible woman because of pure pride," commented Anthony, a 40-year-old man who was also trying to win back his family. "At least you still have a chance to redeem yourself. I've already lost my family completely." These conversations made Robert understand that he wasn't a victim of circumstances, but rather the one directly responsible for all his losses. It was painful, but liberating to accept that responsibility. 6 months after starting his treatment, Robert asked to speak with Jennifer, not as husband and wife, but as parents to the children they had raised together. "Jennifer, I know I have no right to ask for anything, but I would like to be able to see the children. They are my children too," he said, with a humility that impressed Jennifer. "Robert, the children always knew they could reach out to you whenever they wanted. They are the ones who have chosen not to have contact for now, replied Jennifer, being honest about the situation. Are they angry with me? Asked Robert, his heart heavy. They are afraid of you, Robert. Afraid that you'll start yelling again, that you'll be aggressive. That's what you need to understand and work on, explained Jennifer, no bitterness in her voice. Robert left that meeting with a new mission, to win back not just the forgiveness, but the trust of his own children. It would be a long and difficult process, but he was determined to do whatever was necessary. He began by writing letters to Emily and Ethan, apologizing, explaining that he was in treatment, promising that he would be a better father. The letters were delivered by Mrs. Margaret, who served as a neutral intermediary. At first, the children didn't even want to read the letters. But gradually, with the careful encouragement of Jennifer and their grandmother, they began to show some curiosity about their father's changes. "Mum, is Dad really in therapy?" Ethan asked one day, after reading one of the letters. "Yes, my son. Your father is trying to become a better person, but that doesn't mean everything will go back to the way it was before," explained Jennifer, always honest with the children about the situation. 1 year after the separation, Jennifer had completely transformed her life. The construction company was thriving under her leadership. The Fresh Start project was helping dozens of women, and she had become a reference in the business community. More important than professional success, Jennifer had rediscovered who she was as a person. She went back to school, getting an MBA in business administration. She started practicing yoga and meditation. She made new friends. She traveled with the children to places she had always wanted to see. "Mom, you look younger," Emily commented one day, watching her mother get ready for an important meeting. "I feel younger, my love. When you stop living in fear, you are reborn," replied Jennifer, smiling. Robert, in turn, had completed the personal and professional development program. Dr. Jonathan considered that he had made significant progress, but warned that behavioral change is a continuous process that requires constant vigilance. "Robert, you have learned a lot about yourself this past year, but remember, old patterns tend to come back in times of stress. You need to always be mindful," the psychologist advised in their last session. Robert had requested a meeting with Jennifer to discuss his return to managerial activities at the company. It was a delicate moment, as he knew he would have to prove in practice that he had truly changed. "Jennifer, I know you don't owe me anything, but I would like an opportunity to show that I've changed, both as a person and as a professional," said Robert, looking directly into her eyes. Jennifer had prepared carefully for that conversation. "Robert, I can give you an opportunity, but it comes with very clear conditions. Any return to previous behavior will result in immediate termination." "I accept any condition," he replied promptly. "You will work as a technical coordinator, reporting directly to Cynthia. You will participate in quarterly behavioral performance reviews, and you will continue with maintenance therapy," explained Jennifer. Robert accepted all the conditions without question. He knew he was being given a chance that many men in his situation would never get. In the first few months back at work, Robert made an effort to apply everything he had learned. When he felt the anger rising, he took a deep breath and counted to 10. When he disagreed with something, he expressed his opinion respectfully. When he made a mistake, he apologized without making a scene. His colleagues observed the changes with skepticism at first. "Let's see how long this transformation lasts," commented Jessica from the reception desk with other employees. But gradually, Robert's genuine change began to be recognized. He wasn't just controlling his temper, he was truly interacting with people differently. Mrs. Jenkins, the cleaning lady who had suffered from Robert's previous treatment, was one of the first to notice the difference. "Mrs. Jennifer, your ex-husband is treating us very differently. It seems he really has changed," she commented one day. The children also began to notice changes in their father's letters. Ethan was the first to agree to meet with Robert in a neutral location with Jennifer present. "Daddy, you seem different in your letters. More calm," observed Ethan during the first meeting after a year of separation. "Son, Daddy learned that he was doing a lot of things wrong. I apologize for scaring you and your sister," said Robert, with a sincerity that touched the boy's heart. Emily took longer to agree to see her father, but she finally agreed when Ethan told her the meeting had been positive. The teenager was more distrustful, more observant of behavioral inconsistencies. "Daddy, do you promise you won't yell at Mommy anymore?" asked Emily directly, testing his reaction. "My dear, I promise I won't yell at anyone anymore. I learned that yelling doesn't solve anything. It only hurts the people we love," replied Robert, keeping his calm even when confronted. These meetings were important milestones in the journey of rebuilding Robert's relationship with his children. They did not move back in together, but they established a respectful relationship that gradually grew closer. Jennifer observed these changes with cautious optimism. She had learned not to trust just words, but consistent actions over time, and Robert was demonstrating consistency. 2 years after the separation, Jennifer received an invitation to participate in a conference for businesswomen in Washington, D.C. It was a national recognition of her work, leading the construction company and the social project she had developed. At the event, she met other women with stories similar to hers, who had overcome abusive relationships and built successful professional lives. It was inspiring and moving to realize she was not alone on this journey. "Jennifer, your story reached us here in New England. You have become a symbol that it's possible to start over at any age," said Margaret, a businesswoman from Boston who had attended Jennifer's lecture. During the conference, Jennifer was invited to write a book about her experience. At first she hesitated, as she was still processing many emotions from that period, but then she realized that sharing her story could help other women. When she returned from Washington, D.C., Jennifer found a letter from Robert waiting for her. It was no longer a letter asking for forgiveness or making promises. It was a letter of thanks. "Jennifer, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to become a better person. I know our relationship will never be the same, but I am grateful you didn't give up on me completely as a human being." The letter continued, "Seeing you shine professionally, achieving dreams I tried to repress, made me understand how wrong I was about everything. You were always an extraordinary woman, and I was too blind to see it." Jennifer read the letter several times. There was sincerity in those words, but also a mature understanding that recognizing mistakes doesn't automatically erase their consequences. That same week, she made a decision that surprised everyone. She invited Robert to have dinner with her and the children, not as a romantic reconciliation, but as a first step toward a possible civilized family life. The dinner was tense at first. Everyone remembered the last time they had dined together, when Robert had spit food in Jennifer's face. But this time, Robert arrived with flowers, helped set the table, sincerely complimented the food, and spoke respectfully with everyone. "Daddy, you really have changed," observed Emily at the end of the evening, giving her father a cautious hug. "My dear, I am still learning to be a better person every day. But I promise I will never again be that man who frightened you," replied Robert, returning the hug with contained emotion. Jennifer watched that scene with mixed feelings. Part of her was happy to see the children reconnecting with their father in a healthy way. Another part still felt wounds that might never heal completely. In the months that followed, family dinners became occasional, always at Mrs. Margaret's house, always with everyone aware that Robert was a visitor, not a resident. He respected the boundaries, didn't pressure to come back, and focused on rebuilding his relationship with the children. At work, Robert had earned genuine respect from his colleagues. Cynthia, his direct supervisor, gave a positive review of his professional performance in a meeting with Jennifer. "Jennifer, I know it's a delicate subject, but Robert really has changed. He is being an excellent technical coordinator, respectful to everyone, collaborative. If he continues like this, we can think about giving him more responsibilities," commented Cynthia. Jennifer thanked her for the feedback, but made it clear that any promotion for Robert should be based purely on professional merit, without the influence of personal matters. 3 years after the separation, Jennifer was expanding the business to other states. The Fresh Start project had become a national reference, and she was being invited to give lectures at universities about female entrepreneurship. At one of these lectures, a young student asked a question that touched her deeply. "Professor Jennifer, don't you feel angry about the time you lost in the marriage?" Jennifer thought carefully before answering. "I don't see it as lost time. They were 20 years that taught me about my own strength, that gave me 2 wonderful children, that prepared me to value the freedom I have today. Without that experience, I wouldn't be the woman I am now." The answer generated applause from the audience, but it also made Jennifer reflect on her own journey of healing and growth. She had transformed pain into wisdom, suffering into strength, humiliation into dignity. Robert, in turn, had become an active volunteer in support programs for men with aggression issues. He used his own story as an example that change is possible, but that it requires constant work and true humility. "I lost 20 years of the life of the most incredible woman I've ever known because of my pride and insecurity," he often said in the support groups. "Don't let this happen to you." In a particularly touching session, a 25-year-old man who mistreated his wife asked Robert, "Did you manage to win your wife back?" "No," Robert answered honestly, "and I probably never will. But I achieved something perhaps more important. I won back my children's respect and learned to respect myself too. I managed to become the man she always deserved to have by her side." 4 years after the separation, Jennifer received an unexpected offer. A large corporate group wanted to buy her construction company for an amount that would make her one of the wealthiest women in the country. It was a tempting offer, but Jennifer hesitated. "Mr. Richard, what do you think? Should I sell?" she asked the former president, who was now her business advisor. "Jennifer, that's a decision only you can make. But I would say you've already proven everything you needed to prove in the business world. Perhaps it's time to think about new challenges," Mr. Richard replied wisely. Jennifer decided to accept the offer, but with one condition. Part of the sale amount would be used to expand the Fresh Start project across the country. She wanted to create a national network to support women in vulnerable situations. The news of the sale made waves in the specialized press, and Jennifer was on the cover of several business magazines. In a memorable interview, she said, "Money is a consequence of what you do with passion. My passion has always been helping people discover their potential." Robert read the interview with genuine pride. He had learned to celebrate Jennifer's successes without feeling envy or inferiority. It was one of the greatest proofs that he had truly changed. At the party celebrating the sale of the company, Jennifer surprised everyone by inviting Robert, not as her date, but as the father of their children and as someone who was part of the company's history. "Jennifer, thank you for the invitation. I know it's not easy for you," Robert said when he arrived at the party. "Robert, you are part of this story too, and our children were happy to know you would be here," Jennifer replied, with a maturity that impressed everyone. During the party, many people commented on the elegance with which Jennifer handled such a delicate situation. She had managed to maintain civility without sacrificing her dignity. She had managed to forgive without forgetting the lessons learned. 5 years after the separation, Jennifer had become one of the most respected businesswomen in the country. She had written 2 books on female entrepreneurship and personal overcoming, both bestsellers. She had created a foundation that helped thousands of women annually. The children, now young adults, were a source of pride for both parents. Emily had started law school and already talked about working with women's rights. Ethan had chosen engineering and dreamed of working with sustainable construction. "Mum, you are my greatest inspiration," Emily said in an intimate conversation. "You taught me that a woman can be anything she wants to be. And you, my love, can be even more than I dreamed of being." "You have a foundation that I didn't have at your age," Jennifer replied, hugging her daughter tenderly. Robert had managed to rebuild a healthy relationship with his children, based on mutual respect and honest communication. He never raised his voice to either of them again, never again tried to impose his will by force. "Dad, I admire how you've changed," Ethan said during a lunch, just the 2 of them. "I know it wasn't easy to admit you were wrong. Son, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, but it was also the most necessary." "I didn't want you to grow up thinking that a man solves everything through aggression," Robert replied, with the humility he had learned to cultivate. On a sunny Sunday afternoon, Jennifer was in her new office, planning the national expansion of Project Fresh Start, when she received an unexpected call. It was a journalist wanting to do a special feature on her journey. Mrs. Jennifer, your story has become legendary in the business world. A woman who discovered she was rich on the very day she decided not to accept any more humiliation. It's almost cinematic, said the journalist. Actually, I didn't discover I was rich that day. I discovered that I had always been rich, I just didn't know it. Rich in strength, dignity, and capability. The money was just the tool that allowed me to show it, Jennifer corrected, with the wisdom she had acquired over the years. The interview became the cover story of a national magazine and generated thousands of comments from women who identified with Jennifer's story. Many shared their own experiences of overcoming adversity, creating a chain of mutual support that moved Jennifer deeply. Robert saw the feature and felt a mix of pride and melancholy. Pride for the extraordinary woman Jennifer had become, melancholy for the years he had wasted trying to diminish her. He wrote one last letter to her, not asking for anything, just publicly acknowledging his admiration. Jennifer, I know our stories have taken different paths, and that's perfectly fine. But I want you to know that today I understand you were always the strongest person I've ever known. You gave me the chance to become a better man, and for that, I will be eternally grateful. Keep shining. You deserve all the happiness in the world. Jennifer read the letter with serenity. She had finally reached a place of inner peace where she could recognize Robert's genuine change without feeling the need to revisit her past decisions. 6 years after that fateful dinner, where everything changed, Jennifer was giving an international lecture on female entrepreneurship when a woman in the audience asked a question that made her reflect deeply. Professor Jennifer, if you could go back in time, would you change anything in your story? Jennifer smiled before answering. I would change only one thing. I would have discovered my strength much earlier, but perhaps I needed to go through all of that to truly appreciate the freedom I have today. End of story. What did you think of this story of overcoming and transformation? Jennifer managed to turn the greatest humiliation of her life into the starting point for discovering her true strength. And Robert, even after losing everything, managed to become a better person. Tell us in the comments which part moved you the most, and if you know a similar story. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories like this one.